Okay, welcome back. It has been a while. In fact, it's been 10 whole months since my last devlog, which was about Sawkey. And part of what I'm gonna do today is talk about Sawkey. So, in that second slash first real devlog I did for Sawkey, I mentioned one of my major concerns with it, which was that I don't know anything about how to make things online and make a multiplayer game, which it really, really, really stumped me for a bit, and I eventually just figured, what's the point of continuing to try this when I'm still not even that well versed in programming? So I did give up on Sawkey. That does not mean it's dead by any means. I would love to continue working on Sawkey, but my current plans for working on it is to completely start it from the ground up. And foolishly, I decided to not start with the online features, right? I had built the game to work offline and then tried making it online. When I start it again, it's going to be different. I'm going to very slowly start by making sure everything works online before adding other things in. So Sawkey is not dead, for those of you who have, joined the channel for Sawkey. But there's something else I want to talk about. The things I have been working on. If you are familiar with me, you might have known that there was a game I released April of 2024 on itch.io called Alventure. It was a short and sweet little. I said it was a collectathon. There's nothing to collect, but it was this nice little small platformer I had made in about a month. And after I had given up on Sawkey, I still had the urge to work on a game. And so I figured, I should bring back Alventure. So that's what this is. This was a pretty massive project by me. I Here, see, it's just a bunch of stuff. This was supposed to be the playtest. But so, I have been working on all of this for like the better half of like 3 months or so. And so, what the fuck? But this game, frankly, really pisses me off to make. There are so many little bugs because I wanted to make this have really nice feeling physics. And there's all this stupid stuff with the level transitions being those gave me so many issues. Like, he's on top of the shadow in that part, and how do I make the shadow? There's so many issues I had with this game. But like, I had poured so much time into it, I kept just forcing myself to make it, and it was getting really bad. And so I gave up on that one too. It's just something I do a lot as a game developer. At least, as a hobbyist game developer, I'm sure there's some other people, probably a lot of other people out there in every single creative field who, as soon as something doesn't work, kind of just want to give up on it. So, just a few weeks ago, I wanted to make something small. I wanted to make a tiny, tiny game, something I wouldn't have to pour like 4 months of spending on my free time just to have this stupid, bad prototype. And so out of that came this little game called Galactic Intruders. It was based off of this stupid little game I made. It was like this other prototype I made 6 years ago or so, around the time of the pandemic. So maybe closer to 5. But it was before I had really gotten into Godot. I got into Godot first. I was like, this isn't too great. And then I tried Game Maker. Game Maker is where I made the first Galactic Intruders playtest. And I made a functional-ish game in... It was about 5 days. And I had released that on itch. What was it? 2 weeks ago? Now? 2 weeks ago by now? And so... what this video is about, it's kind of to talk about this, because this is my new focus for the time being. Galactic Intruders it's a top-down space shoot 'em up. Here, I'll show you a tiny bit. Okay, we got a little menu. We have version notes because version 1.1 was just released today. Today being October the 8th. I don't know if I'll finish editing this tonight. There's the game, okay? There's this, the majority of this, the very base. I'm hoping this isn't too loud. The majority of this was released and made within the same week. And it is something I am pretty proud of getting done, and I wanted to just kind of promote it a tiny bit more. And, you know, also follow up on what the hell happened to Sawkey. So about the Galactic Intruders 1.1 update, okay? Just if you haven't read the version notes, if you don't want to, or if you want an even more in-depth kind of explanation of what the hell I added, I'll go over that, okay? The first major addition was this guy, the cloaker here. Okay, let's just turn off some of these hitboxes. This guy's the cloaker, okay? He is... It's designed after a cuttlefish. And so the whole idea with the cloaker was that I wanted something that could, like, surprise the player in the middle of gameplay, right? And I found this really cool. And, you know, there is quite an aquatic theme going on with the enemies. The first two in the base game were a lobster and a squid. Both of the sprites have been updated, by the way, for the new update. And so I figured there are so many creatures in the ocean that, well, not so many, but there are quite a few creatures in the ocean that can, you know, change their color to blend in with the environment and stuff and hide. So, what this character was supposed to be, this enemy, it's this. It's a cuttlefish that will remain invisible, at least not completely invisible, and I have it so it'll pulse brighter every now and then, just to make, you know, a bit fair. I don't want something invisible sneaking up on players. That'd be a bit of a horrible thing to do. So as soon as it gets close, see this big circle around it, which honestly shouldn't probably be all around it. It should just be in front because it has the same logic as the same logic, but the same physics as like the lobster, which is just to chase the player. So there's no reason they'd ever be, you know, in front of the player. And so as soon as it gets close, this will slowly start shrinking down and it'll reveal itself. It gains a slight speed boost when it uncloaks itself. And after the player has been away for it for a full second, that's what this timer is, the recloak timer, that gets sent off as soon as the player exits that field. And then it will slow down again, and then it'll recloak. That was the first of me. This one is super cool. This one is my favorite. There is the shader used for this guy is by somebody on Reddit. It was like Game Dev Surge, I believe. It's on the itch.io page. That awesome shader. That was really nice to use. And the second enemy added was this darter enemy, okay? So you'll see there's a bit of a pattern with all the hitboxes and all the collision shapes here. So the green one, that is their body, right? That's their more physics-based, collision-based one, right? That one is mostly just for, because in this update I did a massive collision rework. This one can only see well, it says it can see the player, probably shouldn't be able to see the player. It can see the enemies, and it's basically just to bump into them, right? It's just so it's able to bump into. Why is all of this stuff broken all of a sudden? So okay, that should be better now. So the green one is that. Then there's the hurt box. That's the that's the blue one. That's the one that the player's bullets can see and that they will be colliding with, right? So this is basically the effective zone that they can be hit from. And then the hitbox is this pink one. That's the one that does damage. If the enemy, if the player is in there, they'll take some damage, right? Generally, that's how all of the enemies have those three. And then if they need more, like there's this ray cast it has, okay, that stretches out a few units in front of them. It's pixels, but I don't know. I don't think that's really a good unit to use. Which, as soon as that is collided with, it will enter. So it's originally in this dark chase scene, which just basically uses the same logic as like the lobster enemy, as well as the cloaker. I've been reusing it a lot. It will enter this dart stage, which will basically start a tiny timer in the physics update to just delay its movement ever so slightly, and then it'll just shoot out forwards at you. Like it's just more of a thing not to be caught off guard by, right? It's which is kind of the major, I guess, overarching philosophy of these two new guys I've added, right? It's things that you need to be more aware of, right? Which I can understand might become a problem later on, so hopefully we'll add some more passive enemies. I already have an idea for another more passive one. But my biggest issue with the enemies I've added so far, only one of them shoots bullets. I want more bullets. I want so many more enemies that can actually shoot bullets, and that you can dodge and weave through and whatnot. Which there are two enemies I have in my head that are kind of contestants for that, right? But so the other biggest thing that was added in this update was the changes to how the waves work. So if we look here, this is a photo of what the old wave looked like, okay? So a wave is, in this game, I have it as a resource, or at least as some file, some class, whatever. I believe it's a resource. I can probably actually just check instead of just... Yeah, it's a resource. Okay, so a wave is a resource. The spawner object in the world creates a new wave resource for every wave, and then calls this function, the create wave function, and inputs the amount of tokens it gets. So tokens were a thing in the base game. It's just kind of a more invisible thing. It didn't really matter. I just kind of put it there because I knew I wanted to add what I'm going to talk about later. The spawner, okay, starts out with 10 tokens, right? That's the max. And the tokens, picture it like an arcade, right? You have a certain amount of tokens, and there's a certain amount of games you can pick from, but certain games, usually the better ones, cost a lot more, right? So what the spawner is basically doing, it's looking at all of these enemies and basically buying instances of them with these tokens, right? And then the amount of tokens it has, see, so if the wave, if there's a, I don't even remember what the modulo thing does. I just kind of wrote this, but if you can divide the wave number by 5 and get no remainder, right? It tries this every wave, every time the wave progresses. it gives itself five more tokens to use. So every 5 waves, it increases the amount of tokens it can use by 5. And so in the wave, it inputs up here the amount of tokens it has, okay? And the function is going to return an array, okay? So we create that array right here, new wave, and then we let it know the total tokens, okay? And then we basically loop through for every token, okay? Saying that out loud, that seems like a pretty bad coding choice, but it works. It worked perfectly fine for the first version of the game because both the squid and the lobster both only costed 1, so it didn't really matter. But so every time we loop, we have this selection variable, which gets this. So there's an enumerator in here, okay, right here. This enemy. So okay, this is. I'm getting this confused with the new version. So it's basically going through the dictionary, which I'm not going to show you because that has... Actually, I might as well. I don't care. So the enemy types here, okay? This is a dictionary. It used to just basically look like... If we just type this in quickly, it was basically just chaser and then 1. Because that's its cost, right? And then it was shooter and then 1. Okay, which did work. Fuck off. This is just an example. So the way this works, it would basically go through all of the names, right? So the keys gives you all of the names of the dictionary, and then the square bracket chooses which number in the array the keys returns, because I'm pretty sure keys returns an array. Something like that. The square bracket, basically, whatever number you input is the number on the list that thing is, so you get a random integer, like, between the size, right? Pretty much, that's what that means, okay? And the value is the cost of this, okay? Because if we're just calling from the... If we're calling the dictionary here, we're calling then the specific enemy we have, right? We can get the cost. So, and then we're going to increase total tokens minus value, blah, 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 okay. If it's greater than or equal to 0, if we're able to afford it. We subtract the value, and then we add, see the new wave, the array, we then add the selection we made before. And then we'll check, you know, if that falls through, we'll check if we have if total tokens is less than or equal to 0, which we will then exit the loop. And then the else here, if we can't afford it, but we don't have 0 or less somehow tokens, I tried to make it find a new enemy, which this one didn't work as so well, because what this basically does is it loops through every single enemy, and it'll kind of just return the first one that's cheap enough, which does work. But let's just say there's an enemy that costed 4, and you only had 3 tokens. That means it's just going to pick one that costs a singular token, which, yeah, it's picking an enemy you can afford, but it's also then just setting that problem up for future, like, loop throughs, right? And so this wasn't working. And there was another issue. I wanted to add weights. So these enemies are Jesus. They are weighted choices. Okay? So what I had basically done, I had made it so every dictionary entry has its own mini dictionary with cost and weight. And so what we do then, at the very, very start, we loop through every single enemy type. Okay? So we will loop through all 4 of these. And then we will basically add their weight value to the list. Okay, so it's just with the dictionary, okay? That's all we're well, the dictionary, and then we're getting the names, because we have a separate enumerator up here for all the names. which is in the same order. So we're basically matching the order of that enumerator to the dictionary, and then we're getting the weight of the dictionary entry, right? It's a bit hard to read. It's a bit hard for me to explain. It works. And then the new wave we're creating here. So it's still, we get the array, we still get the total tokens, and we have a separate, I just made a separate function for picking the enemy because it was just kind of, it's a bit nicer to just have it all in here. And then so if the cost of it, I don't have it as a value thing, that was just kind of a waste of a thing when it's not that much and it's still completely readable like this, at least to me. If we can afford it here, right, then we add it to the thing, because this comment here, we only need the name of them, right? Because what the spawner does is the spawner reads the name. Okay, so what it basically does is it gets the list. This list is the thing the wave is creating, right? This array, and then for every single thing in the list, it'll create a random timer just to kind of offset the spawns, right? And it'll spawn the specific enemy in that list, which is just a string, and then it matches that string to one of these. And then if it can't spawn anything, if for some reason it sends us some gibberish, it'll just spawn a squid in its place. I don't think, like, this really should never ever happen, but just in case. And then it'll choose from a random spawn point, because there's a bunch of little spawn points here all around the map. And so but probably the biggest part is that this thing, the weighted choice. Okay, so what it does here is it picks the weight first, right? It picks the weight, and then it matches that to one of the enemies with that same weight, and then it'll return that, and that's how we get the enemy. And then it'll add it, it'll minus the cost of the total tokens still, right? And so instead of having it just loop once, it's while the cost is greater than, right? While our enemy choice is greater than the amount of tokens we have, pick a new enemy, set that as the choice. I'm hoping this works. I'm pretty sure this works. Little funny story. This Elif wasn't here originally, and the game tried to spawn 40,000 enemies because of this one if statement, because it kept looping through this. I think somehow it kept looping and then so I had to add that line, and then I reworked this whole thing. It's basically just this part with extra steps. So, and then, you know, we tell the game that the total number of enemies has gone up. That's just for the tracker in the top right. And then we will return the new wave, which then the spawner loops through, blah, 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 blah. That's really all the big changes for this update, other than the dash, but the dash is pretty, I don't think I need to go into how the dash works. I also don't really want to. But I would also like to talk about what's happening for the next update. What's going on? What have I got in the works? And so the next update isn't going to focus on gameplay as much, which doesn't mean it's not going to have any gameplay at all. So the current plan is every single update there will be at least one new enemy type. There are 2 contenders for the next update, but seeing as I just released the newest one today, I don't think I'll be picking one today at the very least. But the biggest things I'm going to add is just, it's a lot of visual and interface changes, and also controller support is the other big thing. I'd like there to be controller support, and that was also a suggestion I got. But, and then, you know, more settings, having the UI look a bit cleaner, you know, updates to how the health bar and the dash bar, you know, the lightning bolt, that's your dash. how all that stuff looks, how all that stuff works, and maybe, you know, we'll throw in a new enemy, throw in a new music track. But afterwards, concerning the even further future, 0.3, you know, version 0.3, because upcoming one is 0.2, and there's a reason why it's a 0, which I'll get into after. 0.3 is going to be the boss update, which is why I kind of want to spread out these more, you know, I want it to kind of be a bit more balanced with the updates being a bit more, you know, gameplay and then experience. Gameplay, you know, the visual experience, whatever. Because, like, I think it'd be a bit overwhelming for both me and the players if every single update was just throwing even more enemies at you. And then still, like, the UI still needs to be improved. The UI does not look that... I mean, look at this health bar. That's not as visually appealing as it could be. So, that's 0.2. And 0.3 is going to be bosses, which is just why I wanted to get all the cost stuff and all the weighted spawning out of the way. I think along with 0.3, there's gonna be a bit more. There's gonna be a bit more scaling by that point. Like so instead of it just being the harder enemies are more likely to spawn, because, you know, the spawner has a lot more money to throw around, it'll be more guaranteed that, you know, the more difficult enemies will be spawning a bit more, and you know, all the grunts will be spawning a bit less. That's something I'll probably try out, because I don't know if that should be for sure. I don't know if like you know, the cloakers just replacing the lobsters, the chaser lobsters, would be very good from a gameplay perspective. I don't think that would be fun, frankly, but to an extent, I think there needs to be some kind of weight scaling, with weights getting a bit larger as time goes on for the harder ones and lower for the weaker ones. Just so by wave 20, you're not like just fighting 50 lobsters and squids, right? But I also don't want just 20 cloakers and darter jellyfish, right? But it's the update after that, 0.4, which is going to start introducing some of the bigger... We're just going to start introducing more gameplay loops, is the thing. Because my whole plan for this is to give it a few roguelike elements. I think every 5 waves... Currently, what I have it in my head as every 5 or so waves, so every boss fight or so, you will get a choice to add to basically get some new power-ups, right? The way I'm thinking, you get a choice between 3. You pick one that, like, your stats get increased. It could be anything from, you know, fire rate increased by you know, 50, or you know, like the bullet speed decreased by you know, 100, but damage is doubled, or damage, you know, but damage just being increased by 1, right? Stuff like that, and some even more crazier stuff. Possibly, like, bullets ricochet between enemies, shooting multiple bullets. This is all stuff, like, I'm fairly certain I can do. We're not gonna have another Sawkey, where it's just, I'm way out of my depth in this stuff. I've already made prototypes that do a few of these things with you know, all the bullet stuff going on. So, and then after that, once we get a bit more of a handle on the, I know I keep saying we, it is just me though. After there's a bit more of a handle on the whole roguelike stuff, I think I'm just gonna port it to Steam by that point. Hopefully by then we have at least a tiny bit more support. But I'd also like to take it off web so I can do a bit more visual effects and stuff. And you know, of course on Steam it's a bit, you know, more visible than itch.io, almost, I want to say. Or maybe I'm just being crazy. But that's the current plan. All in all, if you've sat through all of this, thank you. But just know, if you're a fan of Sawkey, Sawkey is not gone. It's just maybe not coming back next month. I would like to work on it. I just need to figure out how to do online stuff. I gotta figure out, and I don't know how to do that. Help would be appreciated. I don't know how anybody would help me though, so maybe that's a bit off the table, but we'll see. I'll keep posting Galactic Intruders updates as time goes on. But Sawkey is not dead, and that's something I really wanted to kind of get across with this video. I don't have any plans on completely abandoning it. It was more so I was way out of my depth in doing that, right? And I have no intentions of just leaving it in the dust, because it is an idea I am really fond of, and it comes from a place in my heart where I wanted to make Sawkey because it was just I wanted to make a game that you could get on with your friends for a few minutes and just have a bit of fun in this, like, you know, arcade party game action, and then hop off, right? Which is also why I think I've discussed making it free for some time, especially early on, and then maybe charging like $5 or something, just because, you know, I would like to be paid for my time and effort, but it's not something I necessarily need just yet, right? But anyways, speaking of, Galactic Intruders is most likely going to be... It's going to be free until it releases on Steam. That's my plan. And of course I'll probably get like the donations set up on itch.io. But Sawkey isn't dead. Galactic Intruders is just the one in the development spotlight right now. So that's really all I want to say. I know I've gone on for quite a while. My mouth is super dry and I'd like to take a sip of water. But thank you all for listening and watching, and I will see you all in the next devlog.